من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوكل عليه ونصلي ونسلم على حبيبه ونجيبه وخيرته في خلقه حافظ سره ومبلغ رسالاته امین وحیه وخاتم رسول وبشیر رحمت ونذیر نقمت سیدنا ونبینا بالقاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الأطهرين المنتجبين الهداة المهديين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في العالمين والسلام على أئمة المسلمين وهداة المستضيفين وحماة المؤمنين. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His countless blessings upon us. And I want to congratulate all of you who are gathered here today to celebrate three auspicious occasions that we are celebrating. One is Eid-e-Zehra. The second is the Wiladat of our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And the third is the Wiladat of our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So it was a beautiful video playing about the Quran earlier, right? And what I would like to do is give you a little bit overview of Eid-e-Zehra, so we get a little bit understanding around the significance of Eid-e-Zehra. But I also want to leave you within the short time I have, on 4 honors. Of course, our Allah has honored our Prophet with innumerable number of honors, but I would like to highlight at least 4 things from the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about our Holy Prophet. And in between, I want to tell you a little bit about Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So Eid-e-Zehra is named after our Holy Lady, the daughter of our Holy Prophet, Lady Fatimatu Zehra Salamullahi alayha. And it is celebrated as the day which brings the joy to her soul. And it's a commemoration or the end of the mourning period for the martyrs of Karbala. So the first significance it is that it's 2 months and 10 days of mourning, and after this intense mourning, we celebrate the end of the mourning. But there's a couple of occasions that happen that mark the end of that mourning period. The first is the fact that one of the chief instigators who was responsible for the martyrdom of the martyrs of Karbala, Umar bin Saad, was actually killed on this day of 9th of Rabi al-Awwal. So it is a divine justice that was meted out to him. He was actually killed by Mukhtar-e-Thaqafi, as far as I know. So it actually brought joy to the ears and eyes of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it's marked as an auspicious day where the revenge was taken for the killing of the martyrs of Karbala. The second auspicious occasion is that, the day before 8th of Rabiul Awwal is the wafat of our 11th Imam. And the 9th of Rabiul Awwal is actually celebrated as the Imamat day of our, Imam Sahibul Zaman. Salawat. So it has that extra level of celebration to it, that you have Imamat day being celebrated. You have the killing of the person who did atrocities on the martyrs of Karbala, and it's celebrated in the honor of Bibi Fatimatu Zehra Salamullahi alayha, because it's her children that were martyred in Karbala, right? So it's in her honor that we actually celebrate. So it's supposed to be a day of joy and happiness. Now, that's about Eid-e-Zehra. Now let's talk about our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So our Prophet was born on 17th of Rabiul Awwal, 570 AD, which is, after death of Christ, the way we look at the English calendar, but it's 53 years before Hijrah, if you want to look at it that way. So he was born before the 53 years before Hijrah, in the year of Amul Fil, the year of the elephant. So that's how it's known as. Now, before I go forward, right, everything I'm going to tell you about our Prophet is going to be from the Quran today, right? So the first and foremost is, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send the Holy Prophet? What was his role and responsibility? What did he actually come here to do? So that question is answered in Surah Jummah, ayat number 2, where he says, هُوَ الَّذِي بَعْثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. So he says, I've sent among the illiterate people to do what, right? يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ, to recite us, to show us the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second one is to actually purify us. So by showing us the signs, and then to purify us. And then to teach us the kitab, meaning the laws and regulations, wal hikmah, wisdom. So those are the 4 responsibilities of our Prophet, right? Now let's go back to, I talked about his name, Mustafa. It's a very precious name that has been given to him. It actually means the chosen one. When we say Muhammad Mustafa, we actually are saying the highly praised chosen one, because Muhammad actually comes from the word hamd. And hamd means somebody who's very highly praised. So he's somebody who's highly praised, and he is one of the chosen ones. So that's really the significance of the name of our Holy Prophet. And you can look at it in that regards, that when you see the azan going on in every country, every minute, every city to city, it's his name that is being recited all over. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah Salawat. The other thing is, Allah has referred to our Rasul as something like this. He says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have sent him except but a merciful entire alameen. So now let's go back to Surah Al-Hamd. What do we say? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So we say Alhamdu, Hamd, Lillahi Rabbil Alameen. So he sent the Prophet as somebody who's highly praised. So if you connect the dots, you see somebody who's highly praised, because in his name is Hamd. And by the way, he's come as a mercy to entire mankind. And when we say Alameen, it actually doesn't really mean worlds, but it means nations. Anywhere there is any kind of makhlukat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what it means, that he is a mercy to not only entire mankind, but to the entire creation. Salawat. The second is, this is something I want to, leave you with. This is a gem as far as I'm concerned, right? If you are, anytime you are in trouble, you're doing your dua, you are asking for mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you want to follow the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a lot of times Allah instructs us, do this, pray namaz, do roza, don't lie, don't cheat. But it's very rare where he actually does something himself, and then he turns around that saying that because I am doing it, you should do it. And that is, Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna al-Nabi. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Salawat. He says, certainly Allah and his angels are sending their blessings and salutations on the Prophet. And then he says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O those who believe, send your blessings and salutations on this holy Prophet of ours. So these are the first 2 gems I want to leave you with, right? Now let's go back to our 6th Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Salawat. Imam Jafar Sadiq, of course, was born in the year either 80 or 83 Hijrah. There is 2 different riwayas out there, but you can go with either one. 17th of Rabi al-Awwal, of course, right? His mother's name was Farwa. I'm giving some information for if there is a Kahoot or something that's going to be there, so it helps you with that type of information, right? And he was Imam for the longest. Out of all the Imams, his Imamat was the longest. He was Imam for almost 34 years, from 114 Hijrah to 148 Hijrah. So he was Imam for 34 years. And during his lifetime, he witnessed a lot of turmoil and change in politics in the nation of Islam. It went from the Abbasids, right, or the Umayyads, who was actually in power, which was the Muawiyah's clan. And then there was a period of respite where they left him alone, but the Abbasids, who were fighting with the Umayyads, and then the Abbasids eventually took control of power. So he, in between that time, 34 years, he witnessed this change of it. Now, he was known for his knowledge, and he was known for knowledge and educating people. If I remember right, when Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam was salawat. If you ask somebody how many people were followers of Imam Zainul Abidin after the event of Karbala, you couldn't name 5 or 6 people. And when Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam left this world, there's a hadith out there that somebody went to the Masjid al-Kufa and he said that I actually met 900 people who were quoting me hadith from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And not only that, there is 4,000 different people who have quoted hadith from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So that just tells you the magnitude of amount of education and teaching he was doing. Now, he also had to face a lot of trouble. One was the trouble of what they called gulat. Gulat were the people who were, extreme in their religious followings. And they used to fabricate extra over hadith about the Imams, right? So Imam actually used to tell them that stay away from us because you are not from us. The other type of troubles he used to see was where, there was repression because you had these Khalifas who were constantly monitoring him. And he also encouraged the followers to do a lot of taqiyya. And taqiyya means like to hide your faith so you don't get physical harm that comes to you, right? And there's instances of actually people disobeying the Imam even though he told them not to do so, but it ended up in trouble for the people and the followers. There's a couple of examples. There's also an uprising that his uncle, martyr Zayd ibn Ali did, right? That he was martyred, and he actually told Zayd ibn Ali not to do it, right? But he praised Zayd ibn Ali for his courage, but he said that he shouldn't have gone to war. So he actually was following the same tactics as his grandfather, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, where he was focused more on knowledge and teaching and uplifting the Shia community, versus going into unnecessary wars as they stayed away from politics after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The other thing was, his legacy is actually defined in 3-4 things, right? If I wanted to summarize something, right? Number one was that his teachings influenced a lot of schools of thought. There was a lot of, prominent Sunni scholars that actually were his students. Not only that, he was known for his education and knowledge. That's why he was known as Sadiq also, because that's one of his titles. That means he's the truthful one. And then he had to face a lot of opposition when he was trying to teach the people. And he relayed a lot of hadith from our Prophet and from Imam Ali alayhi salam. So that are some of the things that we know. And some of the things we follow today is the Jafari fiqh, right? And the theology, all those come from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Salawat. One quick example I want to give you about his wisdom is that, when he passed away, he left a will. And the Khalifa of that time, Abbasi, his name was Mansur. Mansur called or wrote a letter to his governor in Medina saying that whosoever is the successor of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, you need to arrest him and kill him. Now, this is a very interesting story if somebody gets a chance to read through the whole dynamic. But then, Suleiman, that was the governor, he actually went and read the will. And when he read the will, he was astonished to read the will. And I'll read the will. He says, I am appointing 5 people to be my successors. And number 1, he said, is Suleiman, Muhammad ibn Suleiman, the governor himself. It says number 2 are my 2 sons, Abdullah and Imam Musa Kazim. Third was his wife, or fourth was his wife Hamida, and then fifth he actually named the Khalifa Mansur as his successor. So that just goes to show you what type of environment that he was living in, that he couldn't even name his successor very clearly. But yet it shows his wisdom in him being able to understand the social and political situation that was going around at that time. So salawat wal Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now I'll leave you with 2 more gems about our Holy Prophet. One is and there's many out there, right? The simple two, 3 ones is one, he went on Miraj. So, that's that part of the story where he's the only prophet where we know of that actually went and visited Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they say he was nearer to him more than, less than 2 bow lengths. And he conversed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that physical form right in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, Allah was behind it. But he talked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that closely. So that one is not the one I want to highlight. The one I want to highlight is the ayah which says, Asa ayyab'ataka rabbuka maqaman mahmuda. It says, your Lord has given you the highly praised station, Maqam Mahmud. Now, Maqam Mahmud is the scenario is that it's the day of judgment, and everybody is out there in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's going to be a mimbar or a pulpit raised on the day of judgment, and there is going to be 1,000 steps of nur or light. And our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to be standing on the top of that pulpit. And from there, he is going to be the only one given permission to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and address him, right? And then all the aimmas and the people who are close to him will be on the following steps afterward. Now, what's going to happen on that day is that everybody is going to be worried about their shafa, their intercession. And they are going to Adam alayhi salam. So someone like me, I'm going to run to Adam alayhi salam and say, can you do intercession for me? He says, I'm worried about myself. Why don't you go to Nuh? So I run to Nuh alayhi salam, and Nuh alayhi salam says, I can't do anything. I'm worried about myself. Why don't you go to Hazrat Ibrahim? And then they go to Hazrat Ibrahim. He sends them to Musa alayhi salam. They go to Musa. He sends them to Isa. And then Isa says, I'm also worried about myself. Why don't you go to the Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And the hadith is that on that day, even if you have an atom's worth of iman in your heart, our Prophet is going to be able to do your shafa or intercession on that day. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu Allahumma. Now this reminds me of a different hadith from Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that so Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that our intercession will not be able to reach those people who take their prayers lightly. So on one hand, there is the hadith which says that, atom's worth of iman. On the other hand, you have the other hadith which says if you take your prayers lightly, because prayers are the foundation of our religion. And there's 2 very important things I want you to take about salat, right? Number 1 is praying on time. Praying on time is very, very, very highly recommended. And then the second recommendation is to pray in Jamaat form. There is the hadith out there that if you actually pray all 5 of your prayers in Jamaat form, and there's 10 people at least, you get the sawab of 1.3 million prayers. If you pray a 5 times prayer with 10 people, you get the sawab of 1.3 million. If there's more than 10 people, the sawab actually is uncountable, because that reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's very important about the prayers. Now, Since it's Eid-e-Zehra, so there's one more thing I want to highlight about our Prophet, and I will leave you with, our role and responsibility towards the Prophet according to the Quran again, right? Number one, I just want to highlight this, that during the lifetime of our Prophet, he went through a lot of difficulties. But one of the biggest difficulties he probably went through was the fact that he had to bury two of his sons with his own hands while he was still in Makkah. And the Arab culture was so bad that if you did not have a son, they would actually call you Abtar. Abtar means somebody who doesn't have an animal, who doesn't have a tail, like a tailless animal. And what it meant was, it was a derogatory term to say to somebody that you don't have a son that can carry forward your name and your family and your lineage, right? And that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this time when he was going through that difficulty where you just buried your son and you walking out of there, instead of somebody saying, giving you condolences, they walk up to you and to your face call you Abtar. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came in and he says, Inna atayna kal kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shaniyaka huwal abtar. He says, we have given you Kawthar. And the Kawthar actually is our holy lady, Bibi Fatimatu Zehra, salamullah alayhi. And that's how the lineage of our Prophet went forward. This is why, and then he says that, by the way, pray and give sacrifice, because it's your enemies who are going to be Abtar. They are going to be the ones who's going to be left without their name out there. Versus you, your honor is going to continue on and on and on. Now, there is a couple ayahs from Surah Fatah. I want to leave with this. There's no gum. It's a day of celebration. So I want to kind of end this with a note towards, us. What does the Prophet mean to us, and what should we do for the Prophet according to the Quran? So in Surah Fatah, ayah number 8, Allah says, Inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nazira. We have sent the Prophet as a witness over everybody. So he's going to be the final witness over all the nations, all the prophets. Not only that, he is a mubashir, a bearer of good news. The bearer of good news gives you good news about things that are going to benefit you. And then wa nazira, a warner, somebody who's going to give you a warning about things that you should avoid or things that will get you in trouble. And then the next ayah, he says that, there is 5 things or 4 things that we should actually do for our Prophet. Now, I'm not going to read you the ayat. I'm going to actually give you the explanation of the ayah, which is in the next ayah. The first and foremost responsibility is actually believing in Allah and His Messenger. Faith, Iman. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu. Having faith. The second one is actually supporting our Prophet and his teachings and carrying his legacy forward. How can we do it today? We need to teach our children, we need to teach our friends, we need to carry forward the message of Islam, the teachings of our Prophet, and teach it to everybody. The third is by honoring him. And how do you honor him? With Hadith-e-Thaqalain, right, where he said he left 280 things. The Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. And if you hold on to both of them, you will never go astray. So the way to honor the Prophet is actually hold on to the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. And then the last part is actually talks about engaging in regular remembrance and glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which goes back to Salat again. So with that, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, give us inspiration and motivation from the martyrs of Karbala to stand up against injustice wherever it may be found. O Allah, we ask you for all that is good in this world and in the hereafter. O Allah, we seek refuge with you from evil in this world and in the hereafter. O Allah, we ask you for the good that your servant and prophet asked for. We seek refuge with you from evil from which your servant and prophet sought refuge from. O Allah, we ask you for paradise and for that which brings one closer to it. And we seek